Hello, and thanks for joining us. This is What Now. Let's begin by bringing you updates from COP28 Climate Summit. As the UN climate talks unfold in Dubai, there is mounting anticipation for governments to prominently feature a planned cessation of coal, oil and gas in the official COP28 outcome. This comes as a recent report suggests science and equity-driven timelines for nations to cease coal, oil and gas extraction, aiming to restrict global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The report emphasizes the crucial role of international assistance, particularly in economically challenged countries. To achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius target and facilitate a fair worldwide transition from fossil fuels, the report underscores the imperative that no nation should develop new fossil fuel extraction infrastructure. Meanwhile, the UN climate chief, Simon Stiell, says there is need for COP to deliver a bullet train to speed up climate action. He stated this while giving an address.
Now, all governments must give their negotiators clear marching orders. We need highest ambition, not point scoring or lowest common denominator politics. Loss and damage was a win, but we're kidding ourselves if we think it's a tick in the box for finance and support at this COP. More is required.
Joining me for more on this is the Africa Senior Program Officer, Natural Resource Governance Institute, Dennis Gary. Good to have you join us. So we know that COP28 and just the conference as a whole is a representation of different interests. But I want to ask you how a global summit like this can motivate leaders to stick to their commitments and actually phase out fossil fuel.
Thank you very much for having me. From COP here, we are just ending the first week, what is usually called the first week, and there's going to be a global stock take this evening. And I'm just standing in front of the hall where the global stock take will be happening. Generally, these conversations are national level conversations that are intended to prompt action from world leaders to resolve some of the urgent issues of climate change, especially around historic emissions and the requirements of developing countries like Nigeria to be able to address the issues of energy poverty and also address the issues of climate, among others. And so these conversations cannot be underrated because of the kind of outcomes we are seeing from COP28, for instance. We are seeing increasing dedication of funds into the loss and damage fund. We are also seeing a commitment to triple renewable energy penetration and actually to double energy efficiency over the next few years. And so commitments like this cannot be swept under the carpet, under the guise of a talk shop, because real actions, real partnerships really take place at these COPs. And we all have to take advantage of these, particularly developing countries, to attract the needed financing to finance climate action.
And I like that you said we all, which means that it's not just government, it is also the people as well. So in the face of political and economic challenges, how can everyday people and local movements influence governments, to keep their promises on ending fossil fuel?
So there are a lot of dialogues that take place in different spaces. Communities have to make their voices heard. And if you come to COP, you really find community voices at COP. Citizens have a voice. Many of the communiques that have been issued, and I know, for instance, the youth groups met in Cameroon before the COP and issued a statement. Those statements count in terms of the drafting of the agreements that we see, and some of the negotiations that go on at COP are really influenced by some of these conversations that happen at the country level. And so let us not underrate the conversations that happen. I see a lot of media people here taking positions and arguing for specific courses of action to be taken as part of the negotiations. For instance, I just had an interview with one journalist who doesn't seem to understand why African countries are emphasizing so much gas when we know that some of those investments are likely not to break even. We are also not emphasizing renewable energy development enough. There is a lot of talk around renewable energy, and we are not committing resources, including international financing for these things from the developed countries and from those who have extracted oil all these years for their development. And so the conversations that happen are in different angles, and they all contribute to shaping the kind of agreements that we reach at COP. And that transforms the lives of people in communities that help to mitigate the impacts of climate change, for instance, for farmers in northern Nigeria, for people living in coastal areas who are suffering the effect of the rise in sea levels, and many other segments of the climate change conversation that are impacted by such global dialogues.
But there are also concerns around job losses and economic shakeups. So what can be done to ensure that a shift away from fossil fuel is fair and that communities are not left struggling?
First of all, the research by the National Resource Governance Institute shows that many of the countries, particularly in developing countries, where we are struggling with currency crisis, where we are struggling with inflation, where we are running to the IMF for support to deal with our issues of economic and fiscal issues, really are the ones that are emphasizing increasing investments in exploration, in production, and in the development of gas resources. Our view really is that some of these finances that are being invested may not break even. Some of these finances may result in locked-in funds that are also relevant for other segments of our population. For instance, those funds can be invested in education, they can be invested in health, they can be invested in modernizing our agricultural systems. And so some of these funds really have more uses, more important uses for the population of these countries than to be invested in fossil fuels. And so we have cautioned that, for instance, there are some high-cost projects that may not break even in the short term. And it's really important that we measure the kind of investments that we are making, how economical these investments are, the break-even time, how long will it take these investments to become profitable. And it's really important that we consider all of these.
Thank you so much for talking to us, Africa Senior Program Officer, Natural Resource Governance Institute, Dennis Geyiri. Always good to have your analysis on this issue.
Thank you for having me.